The Earth Science.
Bienvenidos, hola, soy Gosha de Agencia Cósmica y tengo el honor de presentaros este artículo escrito por Svaru misma, el artículo sobre la ciencia terrestre. Estaba pensando ayer qué podría añadir, qué podría decir y en verdad es que no sé qué podrías decir más. Todo está bien explicado en el artículo mismo. Tengo que decir que aprendí mucho yo misma porque la ciencia no es mi lado fuerte, entonces aprendí mucho también. El artículo trata de por qué no fiarse de la ciencia terrestre, qué limitaciones tiene y por qué y qué agenda hay, ¿no?, atrás de la ciencia aquí humana. Cómo estamos llevados a creer solamente los que nos explican ellos, los que nos explican autoridades. Y ejemplo de esto es mi mamá. Ayer estoy aquí en Polonia visitando a mis padres y ayer estaba caminando un poco con ella y le expliqué un poquito sobre este tema, ¿no? Este tema pleiadiano. Ella es la única en mi familia con quien puedo hablar un poquito a veces sobre esto. Y le dije que Svaru viene de Erra, Solta y Heta, en las Pleiades, y la primera pregunta que me hizo, pero ¿este planeta es como ya reconocida? ¿Se sabe que existe este planeta? Es la primera pregunta que siempre la gente hace, que la gente siempre se fija en lo que dicen los científicos. Es como una Biblia para nosotros. Entonces de esto, entre otras cosas, se tratará este artículo. También mencionará a la divulgación extraterrestre oficial, mencionará al descubrimiento del cráneo extraterrestre y qué pasó allí. También hablará de la energía libre, de la mecánica cuántica y explicará cómo el mundo está dominado por las ideas materialistas, reduccionistas y deterministas, y cómo todo esto conjunto apoya el sistema de la Matrix que está creado para muchas cosas no tan positivas. Mencionará también el método científico que están utilizando y aplicando siempre los científicos y cómo este método está muy limitado porque sí que funciona y se puede aplicar para los fenómenos del mundo físico, pero para que la ciencia pueda avanzar, este mismo método científico ya no se puede aplicar. Es como autoasesinas tu propio avance. Este método científico, lo que es real es solamente lo que se puede probar y observar. Este mismo método autosabotea el avance de la misma ciencia y así no se puede expandir. Entonces de esto también hablará Svaru. Os recomiendo mucho ver el artículo hasta final porque según mi opinión es aún más interesante. En la segunda parte se está desarrollando ciertos conceptos y tengo que decir que hasta que me emocioné, casi me emocioné, me salieron un poco las lágrimas en la segunda parte porque es bastante fuerte el artículo y muy claro y muy directo, y cuando me di cuenta de la manipulación aquí en la Tierra y todo lo que está pasando, que me emocioné bastante. Entonces esto, os dejo con este artículo. Recordad, es el artículo escrito por la misma Svaru, por el mismo extraterrestre, su perspectiva de nosotros, de aquí en la Tierra, de la ciencia en la Tierra. La ciencia no podrá avanzar si está solamente manejada y se basa en los conceptos físicos. Ellos ahí son altamente desarrollados tecnológicamente y científicamente, pero también espiritualmente, y están involucrando los conceptos altamente metafísicos para que así la ciencia pueda avanzar. Sin esto no podremos avanzar, no vamos a poder salir del marco limitado que la ciencia misma autoimpuso sobre ella misma, o bueno, ciencia misma o los que están atrás de la ciencia. Bueno, muchas gracias, que disfrutáis mucho este artículo importantísimo. Muchas gracias y hasta el siguiente video. Hasta luego.
Those who are in power, whoever they are, The only thing that matters to them is to have more power and more control and to sustain the one they already have, so that the interests of the common good are far from being on their minds. They do not care about the population, they want to exploit it. On Earth there are two kinds of science. One, what is given to the population in general, and two, the one used by the controllers or those in power. In fact, if the information comes from any governmental organization, you should immediately doubt its veracity, since it comes directly from sources that are connected to the mind control system. The government will only give the public filtered information, and always with a specific and carefully planned purpose. At some level, they may be doing real work, but as a rule, you should doubt them immediately. If they were scientists without an agenda controlled by governments, they would be directly involved in the work of scientists such as Nikola Tesla, among many others, who have simply been erased from the public scientific field. Many of them have died in prison, in poverty, and forgotten or murdered. Their obviously valuable work has been ignored for not having an exploitable or usable purpose for their control agendas. Do not trust them to give you reliable or truthful information, especially with regards to the cosmological field. The entire scientific system on Earth is in decline. The public will not see it clearly, but science on Earth is a real chaos. Science today is hijacked by the interests of the powerful, either with control agendas, politics, or economic agendas, where they first create a theory with a specific purpose and then do all the experiments and observations necessary to prove that theory to be true. The results are accommodated and filtered, only using the ones that are convenient to prove that the given theory is true. It has been verified that the results of the experiments differ enormously depending on who is financing them. They also pay journals linked to science to publish their theories as if they were true and proven, when they are only theories. And so those who read and think they are scholars of science for having read them there precisely will be responsible for repeating them again and again, and in this way they will help to easily incorporate these ideas into the rest of the population, and thus a false idea will have spread for a specific purpose, deflect the truth. Humans since childhood have been conditioned to depend on the approval and guidance of the elders, or people who know more than them, as authorities. First the parents, then the teachers in the schools, and finally the governments and the religions. The population is accustomed to being given complete and digested information, is accustomed to being told what is reality, what is false, what is true, what is and is not ethical. That is to say, to deepen, to analyze, to inquire, to question is not part of them. Only very few are able to get out of conditioning. This is by design, because what the controllers want is to have the population completely dependent on them at all levels, and on what they want to give them as a reality. The very fact that people want the official ET disclosure shows that most of the human population is incapable of thinking for themselves, just waiting for a great daddy, that is a socially accepted scientist, or better yet a government, to officially announce the existence of other extraterrestrial races. Otherwise, they simply cannot be part of their reality, when the evidence has always been there before their eyes. The scientific method demands that for something, a theory, to be accepted as valid, it needs to be proven and observable. In cosmology and astrophysics, human science is especially weak because, based on the same rules of its scientific method, what they assert as truths have not been proven. However, they present their theories as unquestionable truths. In the field of astrophysics and cosmology, human science uses mathematical models to verify the veracity of some argument or theory. When models based on mathematics have been proven by human science itself, that generate systems or self-sustained realities in a way of numerical universes that only reflect if something is valid or not within the frame of reference of themselves or their numerical logical system, creating in itself a mathematical sub-reality that has nothing to do with external objective reality. The previous problem is of such magnitude that even socially accepted mathematical models often conflict with each other, giving contradictory but valid solutions from the point of view of the mathematical formulas that sustain them. Example of the above is the inability of earth science to unite in a single theory the relativity and quantum mechanics. This is known as the problem of the unified field, which could not be solved because both mathematical systems are true from the point of view of the equations that support it. However, when you compare one with the other, they enter into irremediable conflict. The theory of relativity is nothing more than a heap of manure wrapped in a colorful cellophane of mathematics. Nikola Tesla. Another example of a theory that has been taken as true is the strings theory. It is simply a self-supporting mathematical system that is impossible to verify, so that if you have to respect the scientific method, this is false. Another very serious problem is that Earth science has taken the speed of light as a universal constant, when they themselves have verified that the speed of light is affected by the interaction of factors such as proximity to a mass or star object, which is contradictory. Terrestrial science is also incapable of understanding other factors that affect time, such as consciousness. If the speed of light is not a constant, how can they ensure that it is impossible to overcome the speed of light, to overcome the great distances that separate one star from another? They use the latter as an argument against the presence of other races in the vicinity of the Earth. Terrestrial science is materialistic reductionist in nature, where it is assumed that something is the consequence of the sum of its parts when the result is very different. The dissection of a living being will not explain how it behaved, how it was, or why it existed in life. Here there is another phenomenon that occurs in people who regard themselves as open, not skeptics, and with great knowledge in the subject they think they dominate. After they have invested a lot of time and effort, a whole life, to the investigation of the subject in question, they enter into cognitive dissonance, which is a spiral of denial, to not be able to process the new data, no matter how strong it is, because it enters into conflict with the system of beliefs that this individual has created for himself with a lot of time and effort. That is, they become what they attacked, or those who attacked them. they are not capable of assimilating new information. They cling to their beliefs that have also served as a method of support, either economic or existential. They see the new idea as a personal affront or an attack on their integrity and survival. A belief is nothing more than an idea to which the individual has given a great emotional charge. Modern science is not based on the search for truth, as one would think it should be, but it is based on a search for excuses to validate imposed theories. The scientific method works very well to describe the physical world, but it stops functioning as soon as it is presented with anything that is not observable. Many things are empirically verifiable and accepted as realities, but science cannot verify them, much less as soon as we enter aspects of consciousness and cosmology. On Earth, science has become another religion, where anything must be accepted by its priests, who are socially accepted scientists who have achieved that status for being at the service of the powers in control of the planet. Basically, who is paying them so they falsify results or distort the investigations so that they fit by force with everything their bosses need. In the past, any concept or idea first needed to be accepted by the high priest of the Vatican. Today, it is by the high clergyman of science. The rest of the population that does not have access to the results and the procedures that have been used to reach them have to abide by what these priests of the scientific religion dictate as truths by imposition. Therefore, science on Earth has become a dogma that is equivalent to a religion. The human population is already conditioned to believe that if something is not scientifically proven, then it is not real. And once again, we fall into the conditioning to have to depend on some kind of authority. And this has been used as an excuse to discard a number of things. High-level scientific studies are only carried out on topics that will serve the powerful to achieve some of their agendas, and everything else is simply discarded for not having any use for them. Many scientists who work independently have given revolutionary conclusions and with fully proven results with the most rigorous scientific methods, but when their results are published or exposed to the community, they are quickly discredited and even ridiculed if they do not fall within the parameters dictated by the official science. This is the case of the researcher Lloyd Pye, who proved without a doubt, using several methods and dealing with the problem from different angles, that a skull that other people had provided him was really an extraterrestrial or extraterrestrial hybrid. The official scientists discarded the DNA coding information that had clearly been classified as non-existent and unknown on Earth. They only said that this skull corresponded to a child with hydrocephalus, when even the forensic analysis of the bones determined that it was an adult individual and that the material from which it is made is somewhat similar to dentin and not bone. And no information was enough to change their position in this regard, and they undertook an extensive campaign to discredit his work. The encoded DNA, proven to be from outside the Earth, is one of the strongest evidence supporting the existence of extraterrestrial humanoid beings. And the official science has discredited and ridiculed him, and this is just one example among many. Scientists must have a vivid and intuitive imagination, because new ideas are not generated by deduction but by an artistically creative imagination. physicist Max Planck. The kind of science that reaches the population is completely hijacked by the controllers. While it is efficient to describe the physical world and for the creation of gadgets and basic apparatuses, it is by nature limited to the 3D, and therefore the matrix. Obeys thoughts purely based on Newtonian mechanics, where the universe is reduced to being a purely material construction, where the universe equals matter. Science on Earth reduces everything to three aspects or consequences: materialism, which holds that nothing exists outside the material and observable; reductionism, which is the method of analyzing something complex by the sum of its parts; determinism, which is where it is argued that all events and all actions, including the human, is caused by something external to the will of the individual. It has been argued that the human being has no control over anything, and that cannot be held responsible for his or her own actions. This fundamental limitation of human science brings very serious consequences on many levels. It arises as a response or reaction to religious impositions, therefore has a clear and strong tendency to discredit everything that is not observable, to avoid everything that has to do with internal knowledge and faith. Human science has a strong tendency to discredit everything that is not in the physical world and everything that has to do with consciousness, intuition, and other existential planes. Therefore, for earth science, the only thing that counts is logic, and the inner wisdom, such as intuition, that could contradict it is rejected. This causes a clear separation of the individual with the original source. Within the materialism, nothing physical has any value for society, and this will result in an inevitable unhappiness and despair of the population to only be able to satisfy their most basic needs, ignoring all aspects of real spiritual growth. This causes a dualistic opposition between religious thought, which is confused with spirituality on the one hand, and scientific thinking on the other, making it impossible to incorporate spiritual and non-material aspects into science, thus limiting its scope of action and consequently its results. It has caused animals to be denied the right to be respected as the people they are, fostering the horrible and unquantifiable exploitation and suffering to which they have been subjected over the centuries. Animal, which means that it is animate, that it has anima, that it has a soul. In the same way, all non-physical human suffering is also discredited by science as problems of adaptation to the environment and as problems or chemical decompensation in the body. Perfect example of reductionism. It is no achievement to be well adapted to an inherently sick society. The values of human science are reversed. The person, the individual, the feelings, the spirituality have no value, and the material and inanimate do. Reductionism limits science to the physical and immediately verifiable, where things are explained by the sum of its parts, ignoring with it the functioning of the whole that includes non-material aspects from other existential or spiritual planes, once again limiting its possibilities and results. And determinism underpins all materialism and reductionism by removing all value from the person and the conscience that simply do not have validity for their systems of thought. This causes human beings to enter a constant state of victim mentality, where they have no control over their lives. They have no control over anything. Therefore, they will cede control of all their power to an authority that promises to solve their problems. Determinism, therefore, as an effect of materialistic science, is perfect for the controllers, who have imposed all this for the sole purpose of controlling the population. Terrestrial science is artificially limited in such a way that it can only give results of something that will always serve the controllers, and is designed to limit the perception of reality to a narrow corridor that will guide humans to move in the exact direction that the controllers dictate. The controllers of the planet Earth have designed science in this way with all intention. It only limits humans in everything and helps them maintain power. The science of the earth is a coral for the human mind, so that people cannot develop anything that is not approved by the controllers and that is not within their plans. Science on Earth is designed by controllers with the exact purpose of keeping humans within a specific framework or limit to control, limit and direct their scientific and intellectual expansion. Sfaru of Erra. Science on Earth is an ultra-reduced caricature of the true science that is observed by all other races. It cannot give the human population neither free energy nor a reliable explanation in terms of cosmology, because both aspects need to incorporate factors related to the spirituality and consciousness, factors that involve other existential planes, without which their results are not true. As for free energy, terrestrial science cannot explain it without accessing other planes, such as the so-called ether, for example, which they do not accept as existing. In addition to its limitation by design, science is controlled and filtered by those in power. So, if someone independently manages to develop something outside their parameters, they will immediately enter to erase their work, and in many cases, erase the person. They cannot allow the development of technologies that are not under their control, because it would cause a cascade of consequences against them, because their matrix would begin to dissolve when their network of lies is exposed. They cannot give you anything that is not inside the coral corridor. While quantum mechanics is taking its first steps to explain complex concepts involving consciousness and non-material, once again it reduces everything that refers to other existential planes to explanations with purely mathematical models, and it consequently invents concepts such as dark matter or gravity particles, gravitons, which is said to be a basic quantum element that carries a gravitational charge. This within the framework of the strings theory that is the perfect example of a self-sustained and ultra-reductionist mathematical and materialistic model that differs completely from reality. If the controllers allow certain consciousness concepts, very limited, to be leaked into scientific explanations in quantum mechanics, it is because this is of no practical use to the human population that lacks the capacity to verify said theories. Even quantum mechanics is still perfectly in accordance within the limits of the terrestrial science coral. Human science and its controllers first criticize and invalidate concepts and theories from brilliant individuals who have developed their own research methods based solely on the fact that they do not correspond to the strict scientific method. Therefore, they call it an unverifiable pseudo-science, and because the results must be taken by faith. And now, that same socially accepted science and matrix imposes on the human population that they accept by faith their own theories that are impossible to verify outside the self-sustaining framework of their mathematical logic scheme, under the premise that it is because I say it, because I am the authority. This is irrational, and this is a criminal act against the human population that must blindly believe them. The same population is conditioned to believe them for being an authority, and because they see those difficult to understand arguments in magazines and documentaries programs that cost millions of dollars. Therefore, they are impressive for people, but they only cover the truth with fireworks, mirrors, and glass beads. Since terrestrial science is limited to 3D in terms of cosmology, it is impossible for it to explain it outside the limited framework of mathematics. Their models differ completely from reality, and in terms of empirical observation, it is only limited to the range of perception of 3D. Being able to observe and analyze only cosmological aspects within the narrow margin of perception of the third density, when the whole universe is composed of much more expanded elements, and that comprise a totality that includes all the existential planes. Earth science ignores these aspects completely. Therefore, its conclusions are completely wrong. If your consciousness and perception is of the size of a small box, your reality and your universe will be only the right size to fit inside that box. If you have a more expanded consciousness and perception, your reality will be consequently and to the same extent more expanded. The greater the awareness, the greater the perception of reality. It is directly proportional. Svaru ofere. And with respect to this, here I want to mention that for that reason, for the skeptics there on earth, with the information given by us, it is so difficult for them to assimilate it, since these concepts do not fit in their mental boxes, and it is easier for them to discard them or fall in skepticism or even ridicule, more if they think they already dominate the subject. That is, the greater the awareness, the better the reception of new data. The skepticism here is only a tool of humans to deny that they do not know everything and that they are not capable of integrating into their mind new knowledge that goes beyond what they have already learned. Outside the purely scientific framework, the cabal controller of the earth has implemented highly efficient systems of discrediting that are activated against any person or any event that falls outside the frame of the accepted science coral. As already mentioned, they confiscate unauthorized works and advances, discredit and even murder their inventors. In addition to this, we must add the aspects of mental control to which the human population is subject. The mass media being the most efficient method by which the scale of values is literally programmed, what is possible and what is impossible. Then the very population of the earth serves as a filter or control mechanism as agents of its own members. That is, even relatives or acquaintances of those who leave the scientist matrix coral immediately tend to attack them as blood leukocytes to an infection. Any person with a radical or different thought, of whatever kind, will automatically be ridiculed, isolated by society, and in most cases by their own family. Very few have the strength and the conviction to continue their way of being, and with their alternative work despite such phenomenal resistance. That is why I maintain in other messages that the human population is the matrix itself. by the same conditioning and mental control of the human population that they receive in multiple ways and from multiple sources. They are accustomed to receiving the information and not questioning it, assuming that what they receive is the truth. I apply this to the arguments against the existence and the presence of extraterrestrial life outside the Earth. As a fact that doing a little research you can check each and every one of the telescopes, radio telescopes, and any other technological means of observation and scrutiny of the cosmos is being administered by the Jesuits, who are nothing other than the Illuminati. They are the cabal. All information from telescopes and space agencies is edited and lacks veracity completely. The human population is conditioned through the media to assume that if something like an extraterrestrial presence, a ship for example, would enter in proximity to the Earth, that would immediately come out in the news of the Channel 8. You have to realize this problem, the limitation of Earth science that has become dogma, which has become another religion. You have to use your science as a very useful tool for some things, but very limited for others, especially for everything that is truly important. You should always bear this in mind. Self-responsibility is always the key. Have the maturity to make your own decisions and to create your own reality. Do not accept that of others, just because they come from a position of socially accepted authority and therefore matrix. Creating your own value system and your own universe is the key. Sfaru of Erra.